Hey guys, Will here. So this might be the shortest review video I think we've ever done here at Boosted Media, but today we're going to be checking out the new Forte Formula Pro wheel from Asetek Sporte. So seeing how it compares to the much more expensive, but in terms of features, pretty much identical Invicta wheel that we reviewed a couple of months back. So as a precursor to today's video, I would recommend you go and watch the Invicta review if you haven't already seen that. Pretty much every single thing I said about this wheel is going to be relevant for the Forte wheel. So in the interest of saving as much time as possible today, I'm just going to cover the differences so you get a better idea in today's video of which one might be most suitable for your particular scenario. So without further ado, let's dive in and check out the Forte Formula Pro wheel from Asetek Sporte. So just super quickly before we get started today, a couple of quick housekeeping things just so you have the full context of exactly what we're doing today. So firstly, big thank you to Asetek Sporte for sending across both of these wheels for us to check out. Now, as is always the case here at Boosted Media, we probably will be making a couple of cross references to some other brands in today's video too. So it's important that you know that every wheel that we're referencing has all been sent to us for review purposes under the exact same conditions. Now, if you do decide you want to pick up any of the gear that you see in today's video or any other sim racing gear for that matter, head over to boostedmedia.net. There you will find a bunch of affiliate links and discount codes, which are an awesome way of saving yourselves a little bit of money and helping us out at no additional cost in the process. So we really appreciate your support there. But as is always the case here, no third party has any sort of input whatsoever into anything that we're talking about today. Everything I'll be discussing is purely just my own observations and my own opinions of the products that we'll be talking about. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some pricing information here. So when we reviewed the Invicta wheel initially, I didn't think it was necessarily particularly bad value for money. I did feel like the shifters weren't as good as they should be at this kind of price point, given the competition in the market. I certainly wasn't expecting at that time for them to release a Forte version of effectively the same wheel at around about half the price, with pretty much the same quality hardware throughout. At least when it comes to the touch points or the areas of the wheel that you're actually making physical contact with, everything is pretty much exactly the same, which is pretty remarkable. So with the Invicta wheel, you're looking at a starting point of $1,249.99 US. And you'll remember there's a whole bunch of customizations that you can make when you're actually ordering the wheel to do things like customizing the button colors, the carbon fiber shifters or standard shifters and so forth. But it does come as standard with 6 paddles on the back. So you got your 2 shifters, your digital switches up the top, and then your analog clutches down the bottom. So the Forte version of the wheel comes in at a much lower price point of $649 US. That comes with just the 2 shifter paddles, non-carbon fiber. You do of course have the option to upgrade to a 6 paddle configuration like what you saw on our Invicta wheel previously. That will come at an additional cost of $149 US. And then unlike with the Invicta wheel, they don't have any customization options that you can configure when you're actually ordering a wheel. That's one way that they can significantly reduce the cost of manufacturing. So they will all ship with black knobs in the middle here, these kind of bronzy color, I'm colorblind, so you can tell me what color they are, but these kind of bronzy colored kinky switches, as they call them, the 7-way switches, and then a mixture of gray and black push buttons and thumb encoders. They are all still anodized aluminium touch points, exactly the same as what we find across on the Invicta wheel. They do include in the package a couple of black replacement anodized knobs for these kinky switches if you don't like this design. So those are included for the base price. And then if you want to, you can pay an extra $89 US and buy the color kit, which comes in an assortment of different colors, which I'm not even going to attempt to name for you because of my color blindness, but they got pretty much everything covered here. So these include the 2 kinky switches that we were just discussing, as well as the knobs for your rotary encoders on the faceplate here. So they don't include customization for the push buttons or the thumb encoders around the sides of the wheel, but I think the nice neutral design that they've gone here with gray and black is going to suit most customization options quite nicely. And I'm sure the majority of people will be more than happy to forego that extra little bit of customization to save themselves that much money over a wheel that is otherwise pretty much functionally identical. So that is the customization options or lack thereof there. Now, just like what we saw with the Invicta wheel, you do have the choice of 4 different grip styles: LMP, regular, suede, or XL handles. These are the LMP style handles that we have on here, exactly the same as what you'll find with the Invicta wheel. So you do just order the type of grips that you want when you place your order for the wheel. So those do come at an additional cost. And then there's only really 2 other things that are different here. So you can see the construction of the wheel shell itself here is a carbon carbon reinforced plastic material, similar to what we find on the Simagic GT Neo, for example. So it has this kind of forged carbon fiber appearance to it, but it does look a little bit plasticky. You can see the Invicta wheel actually has the exact same material in the little raised areas around the buttons, but the faceplate of the Invicta wheel is a 5mm thick piece of genuine carbon fiber with a CNC machined aluminium backing, as opposed to the Forte wheel, which is this carbon reinforced plastic right throughout the entire design. Now, one of the things that I was paying particular attention to here was rigidity overall. We didn't have any issues at all with the rigidity of the Invicta wheel, of course. I was actually quite surprised that the Forte wheels seemed for the most part to be just as rigid under normal driving conditions. I didn't notice any difference in the fidelity of fine detail and force feedback or anything like that. If I really get in and twist the wheel as hard as I possibly can, it does flex a little bit more than what we have with the Invicta, but certainly nothing there in my experience, at least, to justify spending the extra on the Invicta in terms of rigidity. But if we spin both wheels around here, you'll see this is where the majority of the mechanical differences are. So the first thing to point out, which might not be immediately obvious, is that the Invicta wheel actually has a couple of additional push buttons on the back here. Those are not present on the Forte version. You can see the little cutouts here for the analog clutch paddles and the top switches if you wish to add those as an option, whereas, as I said before, those are included on the Invicta wheel. And it's a really clever design. We covered this previously, so I won't go into all the detail of it again. But essentially, there's a little Hall effect sensor inside on the PCB itself or on the circuit board, and that just detects the presence or the location of the magnet on the head of the shifter or the paddle, and that is how it's activated. So it literally doesn't have any electronics at all in the shifter paddles themselves. They just bolt on and bolt off, which is a very clever design. The main difference here being that you can see the back shell of this is also that carbon reinforced plastic, and you can see there is actually a seam all the way through the middle of the wheel in the case of the Forte, whereas on the Invicta wheel, you've got your 5mm thick piece of genuine carbon fiber, as we said before, with the faceplate, and then the CNC machined aluminium housing on the rear here. So look, in terms of presentation, obviously the Invicta wheel does look a little bit more expensive and a little bit more premium, but you know, in terms of the actual driving experience, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, if any difference at all, which actually surprised me. I expected to find, you know, that this just didn't feel quite as premium in the hands. The other thing you may notice here as well is that they've also used a carbon reinforced plastic quick release here in lieu of the aluminium one that you'll find on the Invicta wheel. So again, no meaningful increase in flex here whatsoever, which did surprise me. But what it does all mean is that this wheel is actually significantly lighter than the Invicta wheel. So the Invicta wheel with the quick release and all of the carbon fiber paddles installed, as measured by me, comes in at 1,980 grams. So definitely on the heavier side, although not excessively heavy for a wheel with this kind of feature set and integrated screen and so forth. Whereas the Forte wheel with the same 6 shifters installed and the fiber reinforced plastic quick release comes in at 1,650 grams total weight. So significantly lighter there. Look, I mean, this is a bit of a subjective thing. Some people do prefer the feeling of a heavier wheel in their hands. It just gives it a bit more sense of realism overall. But if you are running a more entry-level direct drive wheelbase, having a lower amount of rotating mass connected to that wheelbase is going to mean a little bit more fidelity in terms of the force feedback. So if you're running under, say, about 10 Newton meters of strength, then you will actually feel a tangible difference between the two different wheels, and the lighter one actually giving you slightly more sharp and slightly more detailed force feedback overall. It is a subtle thing, but lighter does generally equate to better for most people. So it is good that this does come in a little bit lighter than the Invicta wheel, even though the materials that they've chosen to use to manufacture the thing aren't as expensive as what we have on the Invicta wheel. And otherwise, as I mentioned, everything else is pretty much the same. So we've got the same 4.3 inch LCD touch screen. We've got the same 800 by 480 pixel resolution, same 60 hertz refresh rate. We do still have the same SimHub integration with the dash as well. So you can either run the dashes that you want through SimHub, you can run their own integrated dashes through their RaceHub software, or you can run a hybrid setup as well. But again, just check out our full review of the Invicta wheel for all the details on exactly how that works, because it is identical on the Forte wheel. But otherwise, yeah, there's not really a whole lot more to say. The experience is pretty much exactly the same, even just down to little details like the sticker sheets that they include, which I was impressed with the quality even at the price point of the Invicta wheel. exactly the same stickers as we saw there included with the Forte as well, which I didn't expect to see at this kind of price point. I guess it makes sense to, you know, just run everything through the same manufacturing process. But it's really good to see that Asetek Sim Sports are coming good on what they promised many years ago now of, you know, maintaining that high level of quality and functionality and being really smart with the areas that they cut corners on their lower tier products to provide that similar driving experience, maybe with a little bit less functionality here and there, but at a much more affordable price point. Most manufacturers that we see that have multiple tiers of products, the overall experience of using different products within those different tiers can vary very greatly from each other. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of the way Asetek have chosen to do this. So just to wrap things up here quickly for you guys, you'll remember when I initially reviewed the Invicta wheel, there are a couple of areas of weakness that I addressed. Firstly, I didn't feel like the shifters were up to scratch just in terms of the overall quality, the amount of flex and just rigidity in general compared to a lot of other wheels at this kind of price point in the market. I would say at the kind of price point that we're talking about here with the Forte wheel, they are in the realm of being acceptable. They're certainly not outstanding by any stretch of the imagination. We already talked about the design before and how it's nice and easy to add additional paddles if you wish to. But yeah, they're certainly still not the best in the market, even at this kind of price point. They are nice and quiet, but they just have a little bit more flex. I mean, you can see for yourselves here, if I grab the wheel and, you know, you can see as I squeeze it in, there is quite a bit of unnecessary flex there. And look, I don't want to make excuses for it because these shifters aren't as good as other wheels in the market at this price point. But you can see if you're just using it normally and just tapping away, it is absolutely fine. It's only if you really get into it and bend it intentionally that you notice that flex. So, I mean, you guys can see it there for yourselves. You can decide for yourselves whether that is going to be an issue for you or not. The other issue that I had with the Invicta wheel was that I wasn't a big fan of the way the wheel was managing third-party wheelbases. So you remember there was a USB-C connection internally, so you'd have to have some sort of an adapter to allow you to connect it, even though it has a 70mm stud pattern on the back, so you can connect any quick release you want. To actually pass a cable through that could be a little bit awkward. Now, from what I understand, and Andre, the CEO of Asetek, actually showed this in one of their videos, they're developing a little sandwich plate, and it's basically just a thin little piece of aluminium that goes between your quick release and the wheel itself, and that actually has a cable that plugs into that USB-C port and then runs out to give you a USB cable that you can then plug in to your PC or your wheelbase if it has a USB port on it. So that will be compatible with both the Invicta wheel and the Forte wheel. Now look, I'm still not a massive fan of that solution. It's good that they have a solution now, but I would have liked to have seen some sort of external port on both of these wheels just to make it a little bit easier and make it unnecessary for you to spend any extra money to use these on third-party wheelbases. But other than that, yeah, everything else is exactly as it was on the Invicta. So if you are interested in the Forte wheel, again, go and check out our full review of the Invicta wheel. That's going to give you a full breakdown of exactly how all the electronics work, what all the buttons feel like and everything. But I'm certainly very happy to see this kind of functionality making its way down into more affordable products. This area of the market has sort of heated up recently since we reviewed the Invicta wheel. Back when we did this review, there wasn't really a whole lot at this kind of price point with this kind of functionality. But since then, we have seen wheels come out from the likes of Conspit, for example, which do look very, very appealing at a similar kind of price point. Now, we're working our way through a detailed ecosystem overview and reviews of all the Conspit gear. We've got pretty much everything they make here in the studio at the moment. So that is definitely one to watch out for. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss out on those videos when they drop, because they've done some really interesting stuff with this new gear. But for now, that is everything you need to know, in my opinion at least, about the new Forte Formula Pro wheel and how it compares to the Invicta wheel. Hopefully that's given you everything you need to know to decide whether it's worth spending the extra on the Invicta wheel. For me, I can tell you I would certainly be going with the Forte wheel. I think it represents far better value for money than what the Invicta wheel does. Not that it was really bad value to begin with, other than those shifters. But yeah, as I said before, very happy to see this kind of functionality becoming more and more affordable. That wraps it up for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.